Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Hope you all had a wonderful week and happy CRNA week. As this week's coming to a close, we are doing, or I am doing, I don't know who else is here besides me and my glass of wine for Saturday, but doing a live Q&A. So I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to kind of jump on here. Hopefully you're getting pinged or notified that I am on here for the live Q&A. We'll see how this goes. I know that for whatever reason, even though I think we're sending out an email announcement, so hopefully you guys will get that. But I just know like lately Facebook has kind of been against me a little bit, not really showing my my lives. I've had several of you reach out asking where to find our lives that I have done because I think there's only a couple hundred people seeing them, which is unfortunate. They are pinned to the top under announcements, so if you missed all the previous CRNA week lives that I have done throughout the week, they are pinned to the top of the page, but they are under announcements. That's where you can find all the other live videos. If they're not in there, then they are kind of lost in the black hole of Facebook. So I do apologize about that. I have no control over how Facebook, what they do with my content. It's totally up to them, which again, is unfortunate. What other announcements? Again, end of CRNA week. So if you were thinking about joining CRNA School Prep Academy, we are giving the stickers away. Today's the very last day to do that. So definitely make sure that you join today so you get the free sticker pack. If you have not headed over to the Etsy shop, we are going to be adding more designs. I don't even know if I think I had that listed in here somewhere as far as... Oh, let's see if it's in here. I have so many topics in here that I've done throughout the week. But yeah, if you are popping on here, go ahead and pop in a question for me. I don't know where it's at. Anyways, I'm going to put the name of the Etsy shop in here in case you don't know it. CSBA shop. We are going to be adding more stickers to the shop. Should be adding stickers soon. If you are waiting patiently for your stickers, thank you. I actually noticed like a little flaw, and I don't know how I didn't notice before. I mean, no one else noticed either, so I wasn't alone in the fact that I didn't notice the flaw. But there was a flaw in the mouth sticker, like right where the teeth are. For whatever reason, when it printed out, it left like a white gap. So those of you, I have messaged everyone on Etsy at this point, or at least me or my teammates have messaged everyone, but we are waiting till the new stickers come in, so we want to make sure you're getting good quality stickers. So thank you for waiting patiently on that. We should be getting the stickers it says delivery estimated on Monday, and we can get them shipped out on Monday. So you should be getting them hopefully sometime next week. But yeah, we had to order a correction on the mouth sticker. So that is what kind of, if you're waiting still patiently, that is why. If you have ordered all the other stickers without the mouth sticker, you probably have either already gotten it or going to be getting it soon. But again, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to send you a sticker that had a flaw in it. So that is the delay with that. But yeah, I'm going to hang out here, drink my wine, wait for some of you guys to come on. I'm also going to make sure this has been notified in the group. I never know what account to post from. It's like a mystery to me to know what I should do. Let's see. I'll just try this one. It has snowflakes. We actually went sled riding today. Live Q&A. And it was fun. Our 3-year-old was like done before we even left. Like she was like cranky, tired, no nap, screaming like on the way there because she couldn't reach her belly button to like comfort herself with her belly button because she was like in her jacket and stuff. Oh my gosh, so she didn't last very long. But luckily grandma was there to put her in the car with some I forget what you call those little Valentine's Day candies, and she was happy. And our 5-year-old actually did a really good job. Ask me questions. All right. And then our youngest, who's 9 months, did really well until he face planted in the snow, and then he got upset. But he hung out for the majority of the time. So hopefully you guys don't know where you're at, but if you have snow, it's probably the most snow we've had in a while. I don't remember last winter us ever having snow that stayed around this long. There we go. All right. I'm going to hang out here. Ask me some questions. Hi, Jermaine. How are you? I just saw you liked. Ask me a question, any question. Or I'm just going to hang out here and drink wine. It's all good. I can do that too. I can always pull questions that I get inside our community. I have an account. Okay. So I guess my question for you guys is if you have been able to see the other live videos that I did throughout the week, what were some of your big takeaways, or where are you at in the process, and did anything kind of connect with you or resonate with you as far as some of the tips? I think for me, one of the hardest things to do, and it's hard to do in a lot of aspects of my life, is to kind of slow down a little bit. I'm definitely someone who likes to just, I'm not patient. Let's just put it that way. I'm a very impatient person, believe it or not. You may not know that, but I'm very impatient. And usually when I want something, I want it like 5 minutes ago, not like 5 minutes from now. So it's hard for me to be realistic with a time frame. I often bite off more than I can chew, but it's funny because obviously I know I'm like that, and it serves me well, but it also hinders me in the sense that I tend to burn myself out. And I think a lot of you probably can relate to that and are probably going into CRNA school with maybe a similar type of personality. And I think if I look back at my younger self prior to starting school, one of the things I wish I would have realized sooner was that I am like that. And to, you know, and it's funny because I look at like who my good friends are in my life, and one of my best friends, Kendra, we were roommates temporarily in college, and we both went to CRNA school. She often would tell me, she would often point out to me, you know, say, Jenny, like, you need to just slow down a little bit, or just chill out, or just relax. Like you're getting ahead of yourself. But you know, it's funny. Even though she would point that out to me, I never realized it until much later in my life that I was like that. So anyhow, I think if you are not sure how you are, maybe start asking your friends and start trying to pick up clues like that from like your friends if they ever tell you things like that, and listen to it and then evaluate why you think that is. I think it'll serve you really well before you enter school. So, hi, Catherine. How are you? You're wondering, I recently went to per diem in the ICU and I'm full-time in the PACU. I'm wondering if this will hurt my chances of the interview. So you recently went per diem in the ICU. So you're still working in the ICU, which is great. Full-time in the PACU. Honestly, Catherine, it's going to be hard to say. It depends on your school. Some schools, yes, this would hurt you. Other schools are looking for at least that 1 to 2 year minimum requirement of the ICU that they require within the last 2 to 3 years. So again, some schools don't necessarily require you to be current in the ICU at the time of interview and acceptance, although others do. So it really depends on your school. But what I will say is even the programs who historically will say ICU experience within the last 2 to 3 years of applying to school, the more competitive candidates tend to be current in the ICU. And I've had students who, even though they've met that requirement in the last 2 to 3 years, they've actually been told to go back and get ICU experience and come back again. Now, I would question what the rest of your application looks like as far as leadership roles, GPA, how long you were an ICU nurse, was it a high acuity ICU, that kind of thing. And, you know, so I would kind of question your overall application, not just your ICU experience. But I would also make sure that you're looking into what your school requires of you. I worked with a nurse. She was a SICU nurse for, 2 or 3 years. Went to the OR. Loved to, got to work closely with CRNAs and really kind of fell in love with the idea of becoming a CRNA herself. And she, being where she worked in the OR, and one of the assistant program director was an open heart CRNA. He worked closely with me. And so she went up to him and she said, "Hey, I want to apply to your program. I want to give me some advice because I want to make sure I can be a good candidate for your program." And he's like, "You got to go back to the ICU if you want in my program." So even though she had 2 or 3 years of full-time high acuity ICU, he just was straight up with her and said, if you want to come to our program, get your butt back in the ICU. And so that's what she did. She went back to the ICU and then she applied. She actually interviewed at a couple different schools. The first school she interviewed, she did not get in. And then she got into the program where it was closer to like where she had worked. And, so she did get in, but she did have to go back to the ICU. So again, it just depends on your program, on what they expect from you. Some programs are very strict on this requirement and some are not. And so again, I think it just is going to take you doing some reaching out to your program and asking that question. Unfortunately, I wish I could answer that, but I don't want to misguide you if your program's really strict on that, and just knowing it can go either way. However, since you're in the PACU, I don't know where you work. If you work at a place that it's like associated with a CRNA program, it may be very easy for you to try to connect with a faculty member from that program and kind of ask that way. Because again, this nurse who, she worked with us. She worked with people who, like, again, the assistant program director who was in the OR and was able to get some advice from him. I'm sure very good advice, and was essentially pretty much coached by him, and really, I think, helped her get into CRNA school. So, but needless to say, her first CRNA school interview was pretty brutal, and she didn't get in. So, and she's a great candidate. And so I've stressed this so many times that there's so many factors that go into your acceptance, and just because you got a no at one school does not mean you get a no at another school. There's just so many different factors that go into it. So many good candidates get turned away from CRNA school. So I always say, since you're still per diem, at least it might be easier for you to go back full time. But I really, probably not what you want to hear as far as competitiveness. I think for the competitive nature, I think it's best to go back to the ICU full time. And whether your program cares whether you stay in the ICU prior to starting school, again, that's really program dependent. Some programs may be okay with you going to the PACU after you gain acceptance. Some will say, no, we expect you to work in the ICU up until you start. But again, a lot of that depends on how much experience you have prior going into your interview and acceptance. So, yeah, I know. And it's hard for me to even say that because I feel so wrong. Because my heart feels for you guys in the ICU, because I can't even imagine how burnt out everyone is from this pandemic. I also equally know that programs don't want their students to enter CRNA school burnt out. So I think if you're really struggling with that aspect, I think it's always best to kind of confront it head on and ask and let them know, hey, I needed a break from the ICU. I got really great experience, X, Y, and Z, but I did this for myself so I could be more ready mentally to come into CRNA school in a better place. And maybe they're going to be okay with that. Again, it just depends on the school. But I also think it's important to take care of yourself and do what's best for you. And if you were needing that change for you, then I think you need to do one or two things. Either, again, see if your program is willing to be okay with that, or B, look for a program that is okay with that. That's their option. And I think you need to do what's right for you. At the end of the day, it's your life and, it's your well-being. So you want to make sure that's always your priority. Hopefully that helped. So, but thank you for the question. I will say, my time in the ICU, now granted, I can't even imagine if I was in my ICU during all this. I don't think I would have made it. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have made it because I was already struggling with my mental well-being when I was in the ICU. And I didn't really have any. I didn't really have like anyone to really check up on me in that realm, other than like my poor husband who just watched me cry a lot. I don't know. It's so important to address your mental well-being. It's so important. And whatever that looks like, anxiety issues, depression, just overwhelm, you need to get down to the root cause of what's causing those emotions and those feelings. Because if you just ignore them, which is what I did for a long time, I ignored them and pushed them back, you will suffer the physical consequences of it. It will catch up with you over time. So it's just something as uncomfortable as it is to confront that kind of a thing, there's no really solution for it other than to deal with it, you know, and to get help, like professional help, to deal with issues like that. Hey, Ryan, how are you? Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you. I equally appreciate you too. I don't know if you guys, Ryan has participated in events with CRNA School Prep Academy. We did an SRNA Q&A panel last March. I can't believe it's almost a year ago now. Oh my gosh. But yeah, and Ryan, you are approaching, you're almost, well, I know you started clinicals. You probably have like what, a year and a half left, I think, or a year. I know you're getting close to being in the home stretch. But yeah, so it's fun to actually, I love following everyone's journey. It's fun to kind of see the students from, like, I have students who literally when I first started the Facebook group are now graduating CRNA school, and it's the coolest thing ever. You graduate next August? That's awesome. Congratulations. It's the days are long, but the years are short. I don't know how else to describe it, even though you're probably like sick of hearing stuff like that. It really is just because you're so busy. It's like when you're living it, you're like, oh, when is the end gonna come? You know, but then before you know it, you're so busy that you I always describe, you kind of become like a robot, and you kind of just go through the motions. And then before you know it, you're like, wait, did I really just have a year pass by my life? That's kind of how it felt like for me anyways. I don't know if you can resonate with that, if you feel like you're just so busy that you just don't even have time to think about what you're spending like what you're actually doing in the moment. You're just doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, another question here. Is it, oop, you bumped up on me. Where did it go? All right. Is it Nazea? I'm probably not saying that, but that's a really pretty name. Does it work against you if you worked in the ICU too long as an applicant, 10 plus years? No. So you'll hear people say, now, okay, let me back up. Yes and no, but no because as long as you are teachable, as long as you are ready to be a novice again, no. In fact, it's great. You're bringing a lot of skills with you. However, you have to understand that you're going up from being the highest in the totem pole down to the bottom again. And there's a CRNA that is local to us. He's amazing. He is very well known in the AACN. John Holmer. He speaks at the AACN conferences. He's hilarious. Actually, he's hilarious. And he got rejected from CRNA school a couple different times. And when I asked him kind of to share his story with me, they were essentially, I mean, inadvertently kind of discriminating against him because he had been an ICU nurse for so long. However, I think what they saw in him was he is an excellent ICU nurse. He's one of the best. He has tons of experience, and he's very confident in his ICU skills, which is amazing. But they saw that as someone who maybe wouldn't be okay with coming in and starting from the bottom. And he's an amazing CRNA. He did get into school, by the way. I remember, but he was angry and upset the fact that he felt like he was like, they just don't want me because I've been out of school for so long, because I've been a nurse for so long. And they see all my leadership skills and the fact that I'm high up in the AACN, and they think I'm just like, I don't know. They maybe were intimidated by that. I'm not really sure, but he had issues because of that. And good for him for it not stopping him, because he's an amazing CRNA. But it can happen. Now, long story short, he ended up getting into a different program. So, like I said, not all programs, you have to be willing to kind of go a different path sometimes. And it might not always be what you think your destiny is. You might think this is your dream school. You might think this is a school that's meant for you, but maybe it's not. And here's the kicker with that interview in that school. And I don't even honestly remember if I could be accurate in the school that it was, but there were MDs on the interview panel. And I just so happened to think that possibly, maybe, that could have had something to do with it, because they really wanted someone who thought they were inferior, where he probably went into the interview with that much confidence to where they're like, he might not like taking direction from us, the attendings, you know. And some schools have MDs sit on the interview panel. Yeah, so it's just the world we live in and the profession you're entering, and it just comes in all different forms. And so he got easily into another school. Okay. So the ICU doesn't have to hinder you. The amount of years you've worked does not have to hinder you. I think it's just very important to go into the interview. Not that you have to be like all meek and mild, mousy, and be like, oh, whatever you say, sir. Like that, I'm not saying that either. So please don't read into what I'm saying. I'm just trying to point out a fact that sometimes your knowledge base and your skill base can be intimidating potentially, or can make them think that maybe you're not teachable. Maybe you're too set in your ways. Maybe you're not willing to say, no, you're wrong. And if you get, and then they'll kind of gauge that too. They'll kind of test to see if you get defensive about it. And I wasn't there in his interview. I have no idea what happened. All I know is I'm hearing from him how he felt like it went, that he just felt like they were asking him, like, you're a cream of the crop ICU nurse. Why would you go back to school when you've already achieved what you have as an ICU nurse? And he was like, because I want to be a CRNA. Like, I don't know. I don't get what you're getting at. Like, to him, it was just like baffling that they were so adamant that, like, why would he want to go backwards when he was like, huh? I don't know. So either way, it was just an odd situation that he was in. Did he get through it? Yes. Did it feel icky? Yes. However, I just want you to be aware that if you experience something like that, to know that it doesn't mean it's the end for you. To know it doesn't mean it's no. It's just a not yet. And maybe try a different program. I've worked with students from all backgrounds, meaning I've had students who literally probably had less than a year of ICU experience when they gained acceptance, or barely at the year minimum when they started clinicals. And are they rocky? Yeah, they can be. But do they become rock stars? They absolutely become rock stars. I've also worked with SRNAs who have 10, 15 plus years of ICU experience, and they're like rock stars from the beginning, and it's amazing. Like I'll never forget, I had this student, I had no idea it was his first day. And I was one of those cases where I was set to do like some easy vascular case day, which I was like, sweet, AV fistulas, whatever, easy. Well, then there's a general case that had all kinds of like an EF of 10% and like just like a ton of cardiac problems. And they're like, oh, we're pulling you, Jenny, to go do this case because it's more of like a cardiac case. And so you're going to go do that case. And I'm like, oh, and it was like some big abdominal case, kind of a general case, but in a patient who had a really crappy heart. And so I remember like looking at it, and I just got thrown into the room last minute, and there was a student in there. So I just assumed, I didn't know it was his first day in clinical. And I was just like, okay, and he had like a little 18 gauge out IV or whatever in his IV kit. And I look at him and I go, it's go big or go home today, boy. And he's just looking at me. I was totally just having fun with him. And he's like, oh, okay, well, what size do you want? And I'm like, let's get a 14 out. And he's like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to start a 14. I had no idea, again, that it was his first day in clinical. But I coached him through the 14 gauge. He did it. And after he did it, he's like, that was my very first one. I'm like, that's amazing. That's awesome. And then I also coached him through the A-line, his first day of clinical. Now, I didn't know that. I mean, he didn't share it was his first day of clinical. He just like, that was my first 14 gauge. And then after he did his A-line, he's like, that was my first A-line. I'm like, well, that's awesome. There's a lot of first days, first times. And he's like, this is my first day in clinical. I was like, oh, whoa. But he did great. And to come to find out, he had over 10 years of ICU experience. And so, you just, but I've also had students who, same thing, like they had a lot of ICU experience, and they could be a little more defensive when I say, like when I tell them kind of what to do. Not that I tell them what to do, but I give them direction because, we're moving quickly. And if you can't keep the pace, I'm going to tell you what needs to be done because we got to keep the pace. And sometimes that can offend people. So again, I think it just depends on your personality type. And does it get better? Yes. We've also I had a student one time who got to be a senior in clinical, and she was just like right and left. People were kind of saying she's not cutting it, she's not this, she's not that, and just reporting her to, the program. And I got selected to work with her. They tried to then only put her with certain people so she could kind of get familiar. And long story short, even though she was really rusty, even going into her senior year in CRNA school, man, by the time she was done with her, like we spent 3 months doing hearts together. They had her in that rotation for an extra long period of time. She was amazing. She was one of my favorite students by far. So polite, so courteous, just her attitude was everything, to be quite honest. Like that's what I remember about her the most, is her attitude was so open to just teach me, take me under your wing. I'll do whatever. Like she was just like, I will try my best. And she really was trying. And so that was the thing is, yes, she was really rusty. But we got her there. She graduated. She's a CRNA. She's doing great. So again, don't let lack thereof or too much of ICU experience really set you off into this spiral affecting your brain. You'll be okay. You'll have the training. You'll get the help, the support you need. Again, we're all very familiar with working with students, and they come to us at all different stages and all different variations of that. So it'll all be good. And we were there too. Like, I was not the student who probably walked into the OR and was like, yeah, I got this. I was probably, I don't know, because I don't know what my preceptors probably said about me when I was brand new, but I'm sure I wasn't very good. So it is what it is. All right. Selena, thank you for your question. Can I choose what field I want to do once I become a CRNA? So you can specialize as a CRNA. You can choose cardiac, OB, peds. We had CRNAs who just liked doing neuro cases. Ew, but they did. Or we had CRNAs who just liked doing ortho. I mean, you could literally go work at an ortho hospital, which I don't like ortho. I tried it. I even tried working at a surgery center that was an orthopedic surgery center. We did a lot of regional blocks. I liked the regional blocks when we weren't hammered. Like, I didn't like doing 34 blocks in an 8-hour period. My head would spin. But I liked the regional blocks. I liked the skills, but just not the way they did them. And I didn't like, I don't know. But again, you find your own little thing. Like, I don't usually care for ortho surgeons. And so, but some of them are really cool. I work at a pediatric hospital now, and actually the ortho surgeons are the coolest. But it's like at a pediatric hospital. So I think that just the disposition, the demeanor, because they work with kids in their office, they're just naturally, for whatever reason, they're just different than like the adult orthopedic surgeons. I don't know how to describe it. It is very different. And the general ones are kind of nasty or can be nasty. So yeah, you'll find what you like. I loved cardiac, and not because I thought cardiac was, I just thought it was fascinating. I loved watching a beating heart. I still love watching a beating heart. I love just the fact that we can stop a heart, restart a heart, and wake them back up. Like, it's amazing that you can like pretty much take more than, all the blood out of someone's body and put it back in, and just, it's just so cool. Like, I find open heart surgery extremely fascinating. But you put me into a cranie and I'm like, ew, brains? Like, no thanks. I'm not cool. I don't really like brains. And I don't really like backs. I don't like big old backs. So again, you'll kind of find what you like. OB, same thing. I didn't know if I'd like OB. I liked the idea of getting a good skill set. So I did OB, and I found I had a love-hate relationship with it, where I really liked it. Other times it was super depressing and also super freaking scary, like a drop of a hat scary. And now you got 2 lives. You got baby and mom. And so I was like, ew, like, I don't, like, it was, and then it was a lot of like, kind of like, think about it. They're awake. Think about it. If they're in a C-section, they're awake. They're not tubed. They're awake, and they're anxious. They're like, oh my God, what's going on? Oh, and you're sitting there trying to talk them down. And so it's a lot of work to do OB all the time, because there's a lot of PR is what I kind of would say. It's a lot of like customer satisfaction and talking to a mom who sometimes has literally no background, no medical understanding whatsoever. And it's really hard sometimes to convey what you need to do to make them and keep them safe. And so you're putting a big needle in their back, and they're like, moving all over the bed, and you're like, I can't even perform this for you. Like, yeah, so it became kind of like, I didn't always love it. But I love babies, and I love watching babies being born. Like, that was, and then when you have, like, especially when you have a mom who's really thankful and grateful, I was like, oh, I love being OB. But then you'd have like a complete opposite day the next day, and I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't know, thanks. So, you'll find what you like, but yes, you can somewhat specialize, and you can always pick a facility that you prefer the work environment. For me, and like where I am in my career, it was all about my home life balance versus my skill set. I'm to the point now where I'm like, I'm cool. I'm flexible. I'll jump in there. I'll do whatever, but get me out of work on time and give me my holidays and weekends off. Cool. I'll work for you. That's where I'm at now. Now, once my kids are older, I mean, we have 3 kids, 9 months, 3 years, 5 years. We're kind of in that thick of it where, like, I mean, we're just living the baby toddler life right now. So my time is like of the essence. Now when I'm older, my kids don't necessarily want to snuggle me as much. Maybe I'd be okay with like having a different work-life schedule to where I would love the idea of working independently someday. But I'm just not ready for that, because right now it's about work-life balance, and I'm not willing to travel very far to go to work. Like, I want a 15-minute commute or less. So, you have to kind of pick and choose. You can't get it all. All right, that was kind of long-winded. I don't know if that even answered your question, but let me know if that helps a little bit. You can even pick to work at a dental clinic or an endoscopy clinic, or I have CRNAs who work at fertility clinics. I mean, you don't even have to work in a hospital. So yes, it's very flexible. Okay, Cassie, do a lot of CRNA schools have you do clinicals in another state? No, I wouldn't say depends. I mean, a lot. I mean, there's 126 schools. Out of 126 schools, I wouldn't say the majority of them probably have you do clinicals in other states. However, it is always a possibility. Even schools who historically have clinicals in state may get a great opportunity for students to say do rural practice or independent CRNA practice that is out of state, and they will send their students there. It just depends. They're not going to send their students out of state for an experience they can get in state, if that makes sense. But there are certain schools, they will tell you. You can look it up to see whether they offer clinicals in state or out of state. They will be very upfront with that. However, things change, and they change quickly. And I think me and Richard, we're going to talk about this on the podcast someday, because you are essentially, when you're in school, sometimes you can kind of be at the mercy of how things like that unfold. Like I know even in my time in school, we lost clinical sites, we gained clinical sites. And so last minute shuffling, things can change. We all of a sudden couldn't do hearts at one facility. So now we're going there to do hearts. And it was like, so sometimes things change, and they do the best they can to try to be respectful of the students and their commute. But you know, sometimes you will have to travel, and like I know, like when we would have to travel, we would get like long-term stay hotels. We have students who come to my hospital from California and from Arizona, and they do Airbnbs. They shack up with like some of the CRNAs I work with, and MDs have rental properties that they make them like dirt cheap affordable, so the students can have a good cheap place to stay. But all of these things you should know prior to going into your application cycle. Like you should be researching your schools and kind of seeing what their baseline is. That way you can kind of gather whether you're going to be traveling a lot. I've seen we're in Dallas, Texas school. It's a common thing. Yeah, so that could be a common thing for that program. And again, it just depends on the program. Like the program I went to, they had clinicals. Like, so I traveled 2 hours one way just to go to class. So 4 hours and 1 day just to go to class, traveling in the car. And then but I knew that was, so when we did our heavy, like a lot of the classwork, that was tons of commute. But then when I started my clinicals, it was 15 minutes away, then maybe a half hour away, then 45 minutes away. Then I had a clinical that was 3 hours away, 10 minutes away. So it shifted all the time. The ones that were 3 hours away, I did stay in a resident call room and slept on a couch for that month. Was it fun? No, but I mean, I did smuggle in some beer. Shh, don't tell anyone. I was like, but I got to stay with one of my classmates. And essentially once you were done for the day, meaning once you were dismissed from the OR, you didn't go back to the OR. It wasn't like we were on call. It was literally an 8-hour day in the OR, and then I'd go up to my call room and I'd stay. So it really wasn't that bad. It was just temporary. It was just a month. But it was 3 hours one way for me to commute. And then as far as being out, I mean, it was practically in a different state. I mean, I could have went 20 more minutes and been in a different state. So, but yeah, some schools it's common, some schools it's not. All right. And I probably shouldn't have said anything about smuggling. I shouldn't have done that. I probably should. I'm sure I would have gotten in a lot of trouble if I would have gotten caught doing that. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess I was just trying to point out that like, it was a free place to stay. So I took it. And it wasn't really all that bad, because it wasn't like, I never would have done that if I was expected to go back to the OR. So don't take it that way. But I was like, okay, if I'm off shift, I'm off shift. I'm going to have a glass of wine as I study before I go to bed tonight kind of thing. But I probably shouldn't have done it considering I was staying in the hospital. All right. Stephanie, thank you for the live series this week. I have 1.5 years in high acuity ICU, then became a traveler for the past 6 months. And I just signed another 3 month contract. I have been focused on getting contracts in level 1 trauma. That's great. Teaching magnet hospitals, however, I was told that it's harder to get interviews / accepted as a traveler than as a permanent staff RN. Have you found it to still be true? The fact that you're going to level 1 trauma hospitals and seeking that out, I think that's great. I think things have changed a lot, to be honest with you, in the last year. I think so many programs are now seeing travel on their resumes that it's become pretty common. Here's kind of something that me and Richard have talked about and have kind of noticed though, is the fact that sometimes you just don't it's good you're going to level 1 trauma hospitals and you can actually put that on your resume, but sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get. Like, and again, I've had students who like reach out to me and say, I work at this hospital. I'm in Ohio, they're from California, but they think I know the hospital because I think it's really prestigious. And I'm like, one of them was like a Swedish something. I thought I literally thought they worked at a hospital in like Sweden. Like I was like, huh? Like, and they're like, no, you've never heard of this hospital? I'm like, no, I've never heard of this hospital. But people, I think, make assumptions because they think their hospital is big to do, big name. But the reality is, depending on where you're applying to school, they may have never heard of it. So I think what's becoming more and more probably a good idea is to track how many A-lines you get, how many drips, what drips you titrate on average, ventilators, that type of thing. If you can kind of keep your own log of like, not like patient information, but just, you know, today I had vasoactive drips and these are the drips I titrated, and just have a spreadsheet, an ongoing spreadsheet of various things you've taken care of. In fact, I just saw a sheet. If you go to Mary Baldwin's website, they have one they actually expect their students to use for their application. So if you go to Mary Baldwin's nurse anesthesia program's website, they actually have, again, an ICU documentation form that kind of goes over how many drips have you seen, yada, yada, yada. Because it gets to be confusing when you're traveling every 3 months. And if they're not really sure how high acuity unit it is, it could be very misleading. You know, they're like, well, I don't know. I mean, they've jumped around all these hospitals, ICUs, but who knows if they're going to these rural hospitals that literally don't even take ventilators. So I think it's important to really make your resume stand out in that way. But I don't think it's harder to get interviews. But as long as you're getting the acuity and the experience, the only thing that is harder with travel is getting leadership experience. And that could be a hindering factor as far as being competitive. However, if you're seeking out involvement like in the AACN, you can get leadership roles with that. I have also had students who, before they actually apply to the program, they do take a permanent assignment and then they work to become a preceptor or charge or join a committee there within after they, sign on for 6 months, 8 months. And that's kind of how they work around that, is they pick a hospital they like during their travel assignments and then they do sign on. But maybe you spend a year traveling and then you spend 6 to 8 months signing on. But I know that's hard for some people because the money's so good with the travel. So again, you kind of just have to make a choice of what you need. If you need the leadership experience, try to find a way to get it, possibly outside of the ICU experience, if possible, if you want to keep traveling. But otherwise, people who feel like they need the leadership experience will sign on to a unit, not only to get the leadership experience, but to get a letter of recommendation from a manager as well. Have there been any older students you mentor? And also, you guys are showing up as Facebook users, so I'm sorry, I'm not purposely not saying your names, but I think you have to allow permission for this thing I'm using to do this. So I just see you as Facebook user. So have there been any older students you mentor in this profession? Yeah. Oh yeah, we have older students. Eslyn comes to mind because I brought her on our podcast. She's 58 years old and she just started CRNA school. I don't know what episode it is. Let me look. Sorry, I'm still getting over a cold. My throat's all... Episode 30. I wonder if I can... No, I don't think I can comment on here. Darn it. I can read comments, but I can't comment. It's episode number 30 on the podcast, so definitely take a listen to that one. But yeah, no, we have students who are older. We have a wide variety of students. And again, we see success at all ages. It really now, as far as how long have you been out of school, and do you feel like you need some refresher courses? Most schools require you to have your sciences within 10 years. So you're probably going to be faced with retaking some science courses. And it might, even if you're not forced to do that, it might not be a bad idea to do a refresher course. However, inside the academy, we have an entire learning library. I think that you would accomplish a lot just by doing that, versus paying a ton of money and spending time taking a course that wouldn't transfer into your program. Okay, another question. So many schools want you to have A&P, stats, chemistry, pharmacology within the last 10 years. Yeah, that's been a huge roadblock. Yeah, 16 years. Yeah, so you will find that to be the vast majority are going to want that to be within 10 years. Unfortunately, unless you're willing to travel and seek out a program who does not have that rule, which I don't think there's very many of those schools, and they're doing it for your own good. Keep that in mind. They're not doing this as a hoop. They're doing this because they want you to be successful in their program. They're requiring that because they know that you more than likely need a refresher, so you are successful in their program. And someone else made a post recently. They were a mom and they were starting school, and they were like, for everyone who says to just relax, maybe not the best advice for everyone. Now, that's why I try to give that advice lightly, because I do think you should relax, but I also think you should know yourself and know what you need. She was saying that she wished she would have done more preparation because she's busy and she's a mom and she doesn't have time to there's a big difference between like my time prior to having kids and my time now, a huge difference. So again, knowing what you need and knowing it best, it's not a bad thing to do some refresher before school. You just have to be focused in on what you need to do versus spending. I think the reason why people discourage people from doing things before school is not because it's not beneficial, but because people lack direction with it and they don't know exactly what to do. And so you can potentially spend your time unfocused, and then you would be wasting your time. So again, I had mentioned in one of the lives this week that me and Richard have formulated a curriculum, a pre-anesthesia curriculum that we are releasing to CSBA students here soon. We pushed it back a million gazillion times, but we are officially recording it as we speak. The first sections are being recorded, but we're essentially tackling the history of anesthesia to give you a background. We're tackling chemistry and physics. We're tackling intro to anesthesia concepts, intro to anesthesia pharmacology, and then I'm going to go in the nitty gritty of like preoperative assessment, induction, maintenance, emergence, and clinical tips for success. Again, if you are an Academy member, you'll have access to this big course. If you're not an Academy member, we are going to allow it to be purchased outside of the Academy. And you will have lifetime access to this course. And so even if you are in your didactics early on, you want to hit the beginning of that course in the front, you could do that. And then you can save the clinical portion for when you're getting ready to start clinicals, or you can do it all at once and then hit it again later, hit it again whenever. I mean, it's meant to be a pre-anesthesia curriculum. So we are addressing that issue because it is a very common problem we see with students who get accepted but are terrified. They're like, oh, it's been 10 years since I've had any kind of math course. What do I do? Well, we teach you anesthesia math. Okay. So, anesthesia math, intro to anesthesia math is already in the Academy. It was underneath the bonus area for a long time, but I did recently move it to the application interview or the interview area because I was noticing people were missing it. And it's a really great refresher for the interviews because some CRNA interviews will actually quiz you on anesthesia math, and it's also good for SRNAs. So I added it to the SRNA section inside the Academy as well. But yeah, I do think the classes, retaking all those classes, it does stink, but they do it again because they want you to be successful in their program. So it is definitely, does feel like a hoop, but it's for your own good. Yeah, you're welcome, Chelsea. I'm happy to do it. It's fun. I did it. I love cardio. I love cardio. Sorry, I'm just now trying to scroll down. I'm taking too long, I think, to answer everyone's questions. I'm kind of behind. All right. Cassie is more like a month rotation away, or the whole. So like when I had that month rotation away, it's not the whole time. Like I think I had clinicals. I don't remember. I want to say it was 4 days a week, and I had class 1 day a week. So I would drive to class, which was 2 hours away, go to class, and then I'd spend it was probably about 2 hours then I would go straight to my clinical site after class, which was like a 2-hour drive to the clinical site, but 3 hours from my main home base, if that makes sense. And so if class was Monday, I would then drive to my clinical site Monday night, evening, because class would be till like 3, 4 in the evening. I'd get to my clinical site around 6, 7 o'clock at night. I'd have clinical on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Friday at like 3, 4 o'clock, I would then drive 3 hours back to my home base, only to head back, do it all over again on Monday. So I wouldn't stay there over the weekend. I would just stay there Monday or Tuesday through Friday in the call room. All right. But again, I also had OB rotation that was 3 hours away from me, 3.5 hours away from me. And I stayed with my friend's parents because it just so happened to be in the same city that she was from. And I was like, can I crash on your parents' couch? Like, they were happy to have me. That was one of my good girlfriends. Like, I was in her wedding. So, like, we were already super close. So it wasn't super awkward staying with her parents. Like, I already knew her parents pretty well. But it definitely was, it was nice. It was very nice to have a free place to stay and a nice warm bed. So it was very convenient, and it saved me tons of money. Chelsea, does it look weird if you go from a surgical trauma ICU at a level 1 facility to a CV ICU to level 3 facility, even if you were still working with vents, pressors, and critical cases? Well, I would ask yourself that question. Do you feel like the acuity is way less? Like, do you feel like even though you're still seeing ventilators, pressors, and critical cases, do you feel like there's a big difference? That's probably what I would want to ask you. I would say as long as you feel like you can display the critical care nature and acuity of patients you care for in your new unit, that you'll be okay. Especially because I don't know, how long did you work at the level 1 facility prior to going to the level 3? If you worked there for a year or more and then went to level 3, I think you're fine. If you barely worked at the level 1 facility and then went to level 3, you'll probably have a little bit weaker of an application. But as long as you're level 3, you don't have to work at a level 1 trauma. You do not have to. There are plenty of SRNAs who have gotten in without any trauma designation at all. But they worked at a really high acuity unit that might have been rural, but it was still very high acuity, and they still did a lot of very sick patients. And sometimes the more rural you are, you're actually managing them because they don't have a place they can easily transfer to. They're kind of stuck there. They're too sick to go in a helicopter kind of thing. So I guess it just kind of depends. Okay, Cassie, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm just getting started researching the school. I just graduated with my ADN last summer. Congratulations. That's awesome. I'm starting on my BSN this summer. So I'm really just getting started into researching where I would like to apply. Yeah, so that's where you're at. You're kind of in the phase where you're trying to look into schools. That's awesome. Make sure if you see any open house opportunities to do that. Even if you're not sure, it's just going to give you a good insight onto what different schools have to offer and kind of the different variances between the schools. We are working, CRNA School Prep Academy is working on its next open house. I'm trying to get in, like, we're playing email tag / I'm going to people's spam inboxes, but I'm talking to Case Western, Arizona, Otterbein, and then I just touched with University of South Florida, I want to say, recently. So hopefully between, is that 4 schools? I'm hoping we can plan our next open house, hopefully in April. And then we're definitely going to be doing another one in the fall. But these schools all have open houses. I think Loma Linda just had one, or I think they have one tomorrow. Loma Linda. It's been posted in the group. So if you search for it, Loma Linda, you'll find the post. Don't ask me where it's at in Facebook because Facebook hides stuff, but it is here, I promise. So definitely attend program open houses, even if you don't think you're going to apply that program, because you're still going to gain a lot of insight from going to these open houses. And they're free. These open houses that the schools host are free. Through CRNA School Prep Academy, if you attend one of ours, they are free for our students. But if you do attend as a non-student, I was charging $5 because I pay per registration seat for the platform. And so it just helps cover my expenses with hosting it. But again, all these programs have open houses and they're free. It's like kind of a no-brainer that you should be going to these open houses. Okay. I plan to do CVICU after I'm done with my RN ADN and go for my BSN. Yeah, I mean, the CVICU is great. I think, you can't really go wrong with that as long as the acuity is there. But also don't be afraid of the SICU, MICU, surgical ICU, trauma ICU. It's, as long as it's a good high acuity unit, CCU even, you'll be golden. All right, Darby says, what's the best way to connect with CRNAs to shadow? So networking is really key. And by networking, I'm talking about like going to like state associations, looking into your state association, see if there's meetings you can attend. I honestly, what I remember doing is calling the anesthesia department and saying, can I come shadow? Like I walked my butt down there and just found the anesthesia office and said, hi, I'm a nurse here. I want to come shadow you. Like I didn't tell my manager. I didn't tell anyone. I just went and did it. And it got me several shadow experiences, and I connected with CRNAs that way. It was funny, one of my interviews, they actually asked me the name of who I shadowed, and I think it was kind of a question to verify that you really did do it, because it's a small community, they're going to know people, especially if you did a local shadowing experience. So make sure you're remembering who you shadowed and their name, because they might ask you that in the interview. I don't know. But just try to call up different facilities and try to see if you can get in for a shadow experience is really the best way to start. But as far as connecting with CRNAs, going to the open house, you guys, I just mentioned that, but like you usually know these days, a lot of it's virtual, which isn't nearly as good for networking. But like if there is an in-person event, go to it, because you tend to meet current students. And inside CRNA School Prep Academy, we have a document that has like mentors that have said, hey, I'm okay with emails. I'm okay with getting some of your students to email me, looking for connections. But, there is something to be said about trying to network with current students, because they probably have connections that they have used to get shadow experiences. So trying to connect with current students is a big thing, not just CRNAs, but current students. You can also reach out to your program and ask them, hey, I want to apply to your program. I'm looking for a shadow experience. Do you have any possibilities? But I'm also a big proponent of Facebook stalking, like groups, like go trying to join a group and trying to reach out on a Facebook group that's mostly CRNAs. This group, unfortunately, is not a great group to ask for shadowing experience, because it's mostly just aspiring students. We do have a small handful of CRNAs in here, but there are other CRNA groups. Like one of them stands out in my mind is like CRNAs, SRNAs Uncensored. They let aspiring students into that group, and it's mostly all SRNAs and CRNAs. And so a group like that would be great. So I don't know. That's what I have for you. But if you are a current student, again, go over to there's in a couple of different places. The forum, if you go over to the forum inside the academy, I have all the mentors listed out that I have compiled with their emails in there for you to reach out to. Now, I don't have one from every state. I'm working on it, but I don't have one from every state. So there are a lot of holes, but I will do my best to try to help you. Just send me a DM inside the forum, and or on the social wall, and I will do my best to try to connect you with someone. I wish I could do it for you all. I really do. But there's 1,700 of you guys, 17,000 of you guys. So I do my best to try to help CSPA students to connect with people. But again, I just do my best, and I'm one person. So take mercy on me. But I really wish I could help you all. But it is a lot of legwork. I do a lot of Facebook stalking. I reach out to a lot of strangers, and I suggest that you try to do the same thing. Okay, so Jody, if you were doing travel nursing, can you use a letter of recommendation from a manager of the last staff position, even if it's over 6 months? This, again, depends on your program. I would say yes, but also you need to check with your program. I would say most programs are going to probably be fine with that, but you will find the occasional program who really wants it to be a current manager. But the vast majority would probably tell you it's okay to use a previous manager. But I still encourage you to ask, because I don't want to misguide you. And this is what's hard about navigating all of this, is because especially if you're applying to multiple schools, you may be given one advice about, oh yeah, that's totally fine, ask your previous manager, and you're like, oh cool, that must be the standard, that must be what all schools are okay with. And then you do the same thing for the next application, and they're like, she didn't even follow directions. I asked for a current manager, she didn't follow the directions. But it's because the last program told you it's okay. So you really have to take every application as a very individual, unique application, and check with your schools when stuff like this, if you're not sure. If it clearly says on their website, current nurse manager, confirm with them that they're okay with this, okay? If it doesn't say current nurse manager, it just says nurse manager, if it says current or previous nurse manager, well, then you know you're okay. If it doesn't say anything, if it just says nurse manager, professor, like if it doesn't specifically say whether it's current or past, then you got to ask. And if it says current, then you got to ask, right? Because then you're not sure if you can bend the rules a little bit. So unfortunately, I think you're just going to have to reach out to where you want to apply to ask that question. I feel like it will be hard to get a letter of reference while doing travel assignment. That is also why earlier I said that some nurses will take a position prior to applying and then work there for 6 to 8 months and then ask for that letter of reference and then apply. Some have had to do that to kind of get around that. However, if your program accepts a previous nurse manager, then you're golden. But you got to find that out first before you assume, you don't want to assume and then get to apply and like, oh, what do I do? You know what I mean? So I'm glad you are asking this question now because you need to do some digging prior to making some decisions, right? So as long as you get your information now, you can plan accordingly, whether that's travel now for a year and then when you're closer to your application, maybe 6 to 8 months out, take a position and then ask for a letter of reference closer to your application deadline, like 6 months. I would give them at least like a month before your deadline, at least, because you don't want to like pushing it too close. I would even suggest 2 or 3 months before, because sometimes people drag their feet with writing letters of reference. But yeah, that's my advice for you, is to kind of gauge, depending on what school you're going to and what you need to do. Oh, next question. I did not have children prior to going to CRNA school. I had a dog, a sickly dog. He was a lot of work. He was, I used to joke that he survived on overly loved syndrome. Like he was like immunocompromised and got the mange all the time and like yeast infections and like all kinds of weird things. Like his wiener would get stuck. Like it wouldn't go back in his little thingy-majigger. Oh, it was so awful. Like he was lucky that I didn't have children because that kept him alive. He was on all kinds of like immunosuppressant. He was just a mess. So he was quite the ordeal in school. But no, I did not have kids. And look, I mean, we have 3 kids now. And if I could go back to school now, I now knowing what it would take to go through school and the fact that we have 3 kids now and kind of knowing what my life is like, I live by my parents, and I would highly suggest that if you were to go back to school with kids, that you have someone nearby to where if you need someone to pick up your kids from daycare, you can call them up and say, hey, I'm going to be late. Can you please pick up my kids? Or can you drop off dinner tonight? Can you you're going to need the help. You're going to need someone to help you out, and don't plan on having a clean house. Don't plan on kind of keeping up with your normal routine. You're going to have to let things go, or your spouse is going to have to pick up the slack. Your partner's going to pick up the slack. And that's a conversation that should be had prior to starting school with your partner or your spouse, to make sure they know that you are going to need to be studying and you're not going to be doing the dishes. You're not going to be cooking dinner. You're not going to be giving the kids a bath. You're not going to be, picking and tidying up the toys. Like, that's on you. Not me. I'm sitting here with my nose in a book. That's what I do. So I think as long as you have those conversations ahead of time, it can be done with children, but just knowing that you need a support system nearby, because school can be very unpredictable as far as when you get out of clinical, class, all that stuff. You're going to need someone nearby that can, at the drop of the hat, help you out when you need it. I mean, think about it. If your kids are sick, oh my gosh, it happens all the time. They can't go to school today. They have a fever. That's not COVID, I promise. Take them. Here's some Advil. That's what parents scramble to do because their kids are sick all the time. And so you're like, oh, really? I can't send them? Like, what am I can't, like, it's hard to work with kids at home. So knowing that kind of situation could arise multiple times, just making sure you have someone there who can help out watch the kids. So it's not always on your spouse to like stay home from work and risk losing his job because now he's missed too much work. So it's just kind of trying to plan for that, because you can't if your kids are sick, you have to go to clinical. Like, you can't don't get me wrong. If your kid's really sick in the hospital, my gosh, you got to call their program director. But if they're sick because they can't go to school, so they have a fever, you have to go to clinical. You can't stay home with your kids. So yeah, you got to think about that. Which that would probably be one of the hardest parts, honestly, about being in school is planning for the unpredictable things of having kids. You broke your arm? Okay, okay, we're gonna get home. Like, I'm in clinical. Like, honey, like, go pick up so-and-so. They broke their arm today. So it's just the unpredictable nature of it would mean that you need a good support system nearby. Okay. But no, I did not have kids. I kind of, I had planned for CRNA early enough on to where I knew family planning was going to come to us later on. Yes, it was a risk, but I was 28 when I started the program, I was 26. I was 26 when I started my program. I don't even remember anymore, guys. It's been a long time. But I graduated at 28, and so we had kids when I turned 30. And so for me, I was happy with that. And and 35, I'm 35. We have 3 kids now. Possibly talking about a 4th because we're crazy. I think we love chaos. I actually think we thrive on it. So I come to find. So anyhow, and so, but I honestly, if I was older, I wouldn't have held back family planning because I knew I wanted kids, and I didn't know I wanted this many kids. Like I knew I definitely wanted 2, but after we had 2, I knew I wanted 3. And, I wouldn't change that for the world. I mean, your life is short. You have to live your life the way you want to live it. And if it means kids are in the picture while you go to school, is going to be crazy and stressful. Yes, but you'll survive. You will survive. There's wine, there's always wine. And there's always tomorrow. There's always next month, next year. It'll be okay. When is the earliest you should start shadowing a CRNA? How? As soon as you can. Nursing school? As soon as you can. I mean, the earlier the better. This is because you shouldn't take a shadowing experience as a checkbox to go to school or to submit your application. You should take a shadowing experience to see if this is a career path that you really want to put your time and effort into pursuing. This is a long path, right? And if you're just at the beginning of it, do you really want to spend the next 2 to 3 years focusing on getting into CRNA school when it may not even be interesting to you, right? So that's why I recommend earlier the better, so you can really make sure this is definitely something that lights you up, that excites you, that's something that's worth a lot of time and energy to pursue, because it's a very challenging path. And so, yeah, as soon as possible. And then document it. Please document it. Your very first one, document it. I wish I would have done that. If you document it, you'll learn every time you do it. You're going to gain more from that experience. I always tell students to document it, even if it's just on a piece of paper, although there is a free shadow documentation form floating somewhere around Facebook land, hidden all the cracks and nooks and crannies of Facebook. But we do have, when I'm done with this live, I can make sure I post it in the comments for you, but it is a free shadow documentation form that you can take with you for your first experience. However, look on your potential future school's website, because they may have a real specific shadow form that you can use as well. So definitely keep that in mind. All right, Ryan. I did not feel like having children was hindrance. Quite contrary. A few of the people interviewing me expressed an interest in them. Okay. Oh, interesting. So you're saying your interview panel expressed interest in your children. That's cool. Okay. Also, schools, you can tell them you have kids, but they can't ask you if you have kids. Does that make sense? Meaning they might say, tell me about your support system. So it's an open-ended question. So you can go on and on about everything. You can talk about your grandma. You can talk about your kids, your dogs. You can talk about anything you want, but they don't have to know that you have kids. And so I've had students also tell me that, they have 6 kids, and they're fearful if they say that. They're gonna be like, well, how in the heck are you going to juggle CRNA school? But again, keep in mind that if you bring up your 6 kids, you have to also make sure that if they do say, are you okay with not being as active as a parent that you're used to being, you're going to have to feel very confident and okay and not get defensive, upset, or afraid to answer that question, because they'll be able to see that on your face. If that kind of rebuttal makes you feel uncomfortable, you need to get down to the why that is and have you really thought this through, because they can read right through that. And so that's where I stress to you that if you have kids and you're going to school, be excited about it. Be like, yeah, it's going to be, just talk about your support in a way that's like, I got this. I've been planning for this. I know this is what it's going to be like. I understand this. My spouse has it. They know they're going to help me out with the kids. But I love my kids. So they bring me happiness, they bring me joy. I know I can take that 15-minute break and I can have them here, quiz mommy over dinner, or I involve them in the journey, meaning we're going to go to Disney when I'm done with school. And so they know they're a part of the process. So they know they have to help me get through this. And as long as you've thought it through to where it's not going to be a hindrance, to where that it's in your being, in your core, you can speak to it with passion, that it's going to be okay. They will know it's going to be okay. They're not going to worry about it. But if they sense hesitation in you, fear, anxiety, unsure, yeah, I do have 6 kids, it's really busy, but I know I can handle this program. They're going to be like, are you sure? Like, you didn't sound so sure about that. So that's what I encourage you to do. If you have children, it's okay to have children, but just make sure that you're very okay with having children and being in CRNA school, and being very realistic about what that would look like for you and your family. And I've been told by a lot of parents, you guys, that one of the perks of being a parent is that you're very good at time management. You're very good at not just managing your schedule, you manage everyone else's schedule. So you're very good at taking a bunch of moving parts and just going, all day long, where someone who doesn't have that type of responsibility, they're not as good as time management. They waste more of their time on Netflix and I don't know, what do people do these days? I'm such a loser. I don't even know what people do these days, like on social media. Okay. But I mean, yeah, people who are not as, it's kind of it goes back to like when you're really busy, you're really focused, and you're like, you get stuff done. Have you ever experienced that? Like the slower your shift is at work, for example, the more you're like, I'm just slacking off because like it's slow. But when you're really busy, you're like, damn, I got a lot accomplished, right? And it's because like you're so busy, you're like, okay, you just can get your mind focused on what you got to get done and stay organized. But when you're really slow, it like kind of, it just makes you feel kind of like, okay, I can waste some time doing this and let's do that. So like when you have kids, you're always that busy. You're always like blah, 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 going like that. So you tend to just bam, 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 done, kind of thing, where someone who doesn't have that is like, well, I can spend an hour on Etsy, or I can spend an hour on Instagram. I don't know. Why not? Like I used to waste my time playing Candy Crush, and I have talked about that before, that I could never imagine playing Candy Crush these days. I just do not have that time. But I found an hour to waste playing Candy Crush most days in anesthesia school. I still got through it fine. So I guess, again, life is it's just perspective, and everyone's different. Everyone's journey is different. So don't let it make you fearful. You will be okay. You will find a way. We are survivors. We are humans. We survive. That is what we do really well, right? We keep going. And you will keep going too. You will get through CRNA school. People get through CRNA school. People don't just start it and think about it. People don't just start it and not graduate. People get through it because we are survivors. You will survive. But the more you can kind of plan it out and think about it ahead of time, the easier and less stressful it's going to be. But it's still going to be stressful regardless of what you do. But the better you plan, the more you kind of try to look at your blind spots. Like I said, slow down to speed up. The better off you're going to be overall. So, but anyways, this was fun, you guys. I think I'm going to wrap things up here. It's getting late. I got kids to feed, including myself. So thank you guys who attended. And also I'm doing a giveaway. I'm going to scroll back through all the questions. I'm doing a giveaway for someone who attended today. And I don't have a really rhyme or reason how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to like close my eyes and scroll and point like with my cursor that you can't see and pick someone to win sticker pack. Okay. So I'm going to close my eyes and scroll, and then I'm going to click on this person. Oh, it's a Facebook user. Darn it. I don't know who you are. Okay. Anyone on here who asked, I should have thought about that problem. Have there been any older students you mentor in this profession? Who asked that? Because that's who won. Darn it. Oh yeah. Oh, cool. I didn't know this could do this. Who asked that question? If you could just put who you are, or you could DM me if you don't want me to know who you are. You could send me a personal message. If you're even still on here, that is. Because you won, Facebook user. I don't know if I should even end this that way, because I feel like Selena, was that you then? Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, this thing that I'm using, it's called Ecamm. I don't know. I like it because you can put these little things all over the screen. But it doesn't allow me to see who people are if you don't accept the terms and conditions or something like that. So, all right, cool. Well, congratulations. You won a sticker pack. Let me write down your name. And thank you so much. Cool. I gotcha. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good evening and happy Saturday. Cheers. All right. Bye-bye.